we are recording. Okay. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started with our presentation. Tonight's topic is one I'm very excited about and I think is timely. Positive refereeing environments with Marge from HR. And that's who I'm channeling tonight is our favorite human resources representative. So anyway, rolling with it. We had a couple of negative experiences in the past couple of weeks. Thanks, Vince. They are in fact my glasses. I kid you not, they belonged to the previous owner of my house, and I had them redone with new lenses. Aren't they cool? Anyway, possibly creepy, but so some of our referees had negative experiences the last couple of weeks. As we're all getting back into the swing of things, I thought it might be nice to sort of run through what we as referees are presenting to the game and ways in which we can influence positive experiences, and then thinking about ways in which we can recognize potential negative experiences, what we can do to possibly mitigate those, and where our expectations are. So, alrighty. Sorry, guys, I am just going to share my screen here. Here we go. Because of course it's not working for me. All right, let us try again. Okay, positive refereeing environments. What we are trying to cultivate here is a positive and professional in the sense of a workplace, because when we are on the pitch, we are presenting a professional in terms of creating a workplace environment. We are pros in that sense, and we deserve a pro space to accomplish the awesome things that we do every weekend. We study, we train, we travel, we work, we put a lot into this. So reasonably, I think, we expect to be treated with a level of respect that is proportionate to the respect that we are giving. What makes us pros? Well, when we're looking at it, it's because we care. And I came up with this acronym. It is representing that we are competent, accountable, we are reliable, we are ethical, and of course we are enthusiastic. So competence, we have the skills to properly engage with the game, that we are going to make this game better for us being there. We are accountable. We want to learn, and we're going to take learning opportunities. If somebody comes to us and says, hey, here's something I think that we could improve our competency on, we're accountable. We want to learn and we want to get better. We're reliable. We're the people that answer the phone. We show up on time, all those sorts of professional things. We're ethical. We're going to make the right choice for the game. We're going to make the right choice about whether we are competent to referee that game, whether we're going to hold ourselves accountable. That's an ethical issue. So we care, we are competent, accountable, reliable, ethical, and enthusiastic. We're talking about positive communication. What are we saying? One way to talk about that is emotional intelligence. We're thinking about 5 different sort of categories of emotional intelligence. We're thinking about self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and what's called a social or a pro-social goal. Self-awareness, you want to know yourself. You want to be very aware of what's going on inside your personal bubble. Even when you're surrounded by 30 people and possibly a lot more, you want to think about yourself. What are my skills? What are my triggers? What am I working on? What am I feeling? So if in a game you're like, hey, I know that I have a particular skill, I think I'm pretty competent here. That's something that I can lean on if I'm stressed, or if I'm thinking that, maybe something isn't going well, let me lean on my strength, my skill. What are my triggers? Like, oh, what's going to set me off? That's important to know and to think about. What am I working on? Where are things that are possibly not in the category of super skills, but we're getting there? And then what am I feeling? How do I feel today? And thinking about what ways that influences the game. So, because of course, click. Self-regulation. letting your mind rest
Great.
and recharge. Yeah.
Sorry, I have a question on the last slide for you.
Yeah, go right ahead.
You said triggers, and I've heard that word used in two different contexts. One in the rugby referee context of, oh, something happened, I need to take an action. Do you mean it in that context or in the context of getting emotionally triggered and wound up?
I think that's a great point. I think it can be taken both ways. So one of the things that we like to do is think about buzzwords and like, what can they mean? So in a trigger in a game, question for you, Vince, what do you do when a trigger occurs? Does it elicit an action?
Yes, it does. That's exactly what it's supposed to do.
Great. So this is the
slow.
same. Yeah, exactly. So I'm sorry, go on.
I was just going to say ball slow, look at tackler.
Exactly. Right. And so when you have a trigger and in that way, it's like, I see it, identify it, I have thought about it, and now I'm going to act on it. Same thing when we're thinking about triggers for yourself and your self awareness. Am I tired? Am I hungry? Am I sick? Am I having a bad day for some other reason? Am I having an awesome day? What is something that I'm knowing how I feel, and I know what might set me off in terms of taking it from this is fine to I'm frustrated, right? If I'm hungry, I have a short temper when I'm hungry. So something that might not ordinarily be a trigger, if I know it's a trigger and I know it's going to take me from 0 to 60, then it's like, okay, I see it. And now we're going to move into self-regulation. We're going to think about mitigating it. So that's a great question. So when you're thinking about self-regulation, you're saying like, what are my feelings in this moment? What is the universe of things that has contributed to my feelings? And what can I do to take active steps to mitigate? It could be something as simple as a snack, a hug, a cup of coffee, taking some space. A lot of times we as referees talk about when we're getting reviewed, we come off the pitch, emotions are high, and there's just a lot going on. Your heartbeat's still up. So you want to take that space, you want to breathe for a second, and then you can go back and have that conversation with your reviewer. So self-regulation, we're self-aware, we're understanding what our emotional states are. And then we're thinking about self-regulation, we're drawing down that filter and understanding that, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm going to choose, whether or not to let that feeling influence the game. It doesn't work. All right, empathy. We're thinking about when things get tough, how would you like to be treated? I had a referee tell me about a situation recently in which they felt like a captain that they were talking to wasn't making eye contact, that the shoulders were hunched, that there was some negative body language here. And the referee was trying to find empathy and to say, okay, what has happened to cause this captain to present in this way? What can I do to reach this captain? And what are my tools in which to establish good communication? Displaying empathy for that player, that captain, and whoever else we're interacting with on the field. Also empathy for yourself, right? Understanding that I have been made self-aware. I understand what I'm doing, what I'm working on. I understand that I have put down this filter, but I'm going to have empathy for myself. I had empathy for myself a couple of weeks ago when it was my first game in 14 months. And I'm like, I made a law error. I'm going to recognize it. I'm going to be accountable for it. I'm going to move on. I'm going to have empathy for myself. Some tools to possibly do that. We're asking, you can use your words, checking in, like making a conscious effort to say, I'm going to check in with the person I'm trying to communicate with and assess their social cues, their body language, their words that they're using. We're going to try to establish what they call rapport, is another rugby buzzword. Establish that rapport and try to communicate. Motivation. What is motivating you to be there? Are you excited to be there? Is this something that you love? And are you thinking about the long term, which is something that a lot of times can get lost. We're thinking about what's happening to me right now, what is happening on the field right now. When we take a step back and say, what is motivating me to be here? What is motivating me to be a referee? What motivates me to do my best work? It may not be that today is the day to work on maybe a skill that I find challenging, because this game, it's not going to give me that level of challenge. But what it can do is allow me to really, really work on a different skill. So what is motivating me to be here today? What is the long goal? And what am I trying to accomplish? So it really kind of gives you a little bit more emotional space and distance to better engage with folks that you're trying to communicate with. What we call a pro-social goal. We're all here to make rugby happen, right? And so sometimes that also tends to get lost, is this person has caused me to feel negatively about what's happening today. This environment is not contributing to a positive experience for me, but we're all here to make rugby happen. So when we look at another individual and we say, this individual is causing me to have a negative experience, but their goal is still to make rugby happen in a productive way, maybe we can think about empathetic ways to communicate with that person. Or if we can clearly recognize that that person does not want to make rugby happen, like a great example is a player that wants to win at all costs. They're there to win, so they're going to take the cheap shots. They're going to commit the foul play actions. That person doesn't want to make rugby happen. They're more interested in winning at all costs. So maybe I don't need to communicate with them. I don't need to establish a rapport with them. That's an opportunity for, maybe we should just remove you from the playing environment. So we all have this pro-social goal of we're here to make rugby happen. Okay, so as an overarching theme, good emotional intelligence is going to make us better referees. Why? Because emotions are always involved. Like, you're not going to go out to any pitch anywhere, any day of the week, and not find a situation in which emotions are running high. Sometimes it's a very emotional game. It's a championship. People's careers are on the line. They've invested blood, sweat, and treasure. But even in a game that's a friendly, right? Like, people care. Like, they're emotionally bonding with their teammates. They're seeing alumni friends they haven't seen in a while. There's always emotion. They might be remembering that rude thing somebody did 5 years ago. Like, there are things. So since emotions are always involved, good emotional intelligence is going to make us better referees. So some of our practical tools. So when we think about emotional intelligence, we're knowing our triggers. And just like Vince said, when we think about a trigger, we have a recognition of a situation. We see the picture is a way that we phrase it a lot. We see the picture and we're like, okay, I'm going to elicit a reaction here. I know what to do. I've seen this before. So my triggers: tired, hungry, injured. You might be fighting an injury and you're thinking about that bum hamstring. It's happened to me. And so you're maybe getting a little bit flustered thinking, I don't know if I can keep up with play today. That's a trigger. You're anxious, like, oh, this is a big challenge for me. Or this is a team that I've had trouble with in the past. You're flustered, like, oh man, I just watched a game in which this poor referee had like a 10-minute series of trying to, he was inside the 10, they were driving, penalty after penalty, and the poor referee was flustered. Recognizing your triggers, moving on. I don't know if anybody has noticed, but I tend to use we a lot. This is something that I was taught, tends to create a pro-social environment. It makes it a team effort. We are working together. It's not you. And also, that's an aggressive motion. We're thinking about maybe using a hand blade. This is a favorite referee tool, using a hand blade instead of maybe a pointing finger, because we're saying we are communicating and also doing karate rather than aggressively pointing. I know some referees that like to do the 6 guns. Maybe don't do that. It's weird. Really not sure. Stick to the hand blade. And also thinking about gestures, right? What are gestures that we can use to help influence the conversation? Train yourself to ask why. That's part of the filter that we talked about, and that sort of self-regulation. The filter is, why am I about to do what I'm doing? We have the trigger. We've seen the trigger. We're going to go to the reaction. And then sometimes it's helpful to slow that down and say, why? Why am I doing what I'm about to do? And that gives you that little emotional distance and space. Seeking out support in the community. This is hugely important, especially for folks that transition from a team environment where there's lots of teammates around, you're out there playing with 15 people, like you've got buddies, you've got friends, people who cover for you. And it can feel very isolating to be a referee where all of your mistakes are broadcast for everyone to see. Everyone is yelling at you. And to really find that center and say, I am supported. People care about me. People are invested in my success. So seek out that support in your community. And then control your controllables, right? Sometimes you can't control. That another story a referee told me recently is that a player, that player was carded and the player immediately burst into tears and just was on the sidelines sobbing. And it was disconcerting for that referee to say, did I cause that? I don't know. And then it's distracting at that point, right? And so maybe just understanding I can't necessarily control what happened to that person. Maybe they're having a tough day, maybe they're having a tough week, maybe this is just the proverbial straw, but I can't control what's going on with them. What I can control is what I'm doing. This is my bubble. And so I'm going to regulate what's going on here. These are my controllables. I can regulate myself. I can't necessarily influence other, but if they come into my bubble, then I can work on that too. Okay, so here are some photos that I thought it would be fun to look at and just sort of see some of our favorite referees using some of the tools that we've talked about. We have Waynesy up there in the corner. In his younger days, apparently he really liked to use that finger, which comes across obviously very aggressive. We have Nigel, he's using his hand blade. He's got his whistle tucked in there, but he's using his hand blade. Joy, always gratuitous Joy, also using the hand blade. We have Angus over there using the finger. And so sometimes it comes across more aggressive than others. Sometimes it doesn't come across as aggressive, but in general, we want to stay away from the pointing finger, want to try to use the hand blade. We want to use some of these gestures. I really do like Joy's gesture down here in the corner because it's just sort of, hey, we're moving on. Hey, Captain. And it's a gesture that is trying to get someone's attention, but in a very welcoming and non-aggressive way. And I guess the question can sometimes be, why are we trying to steer away from being aggressive? And some folks may feel that's an obvious answer, but I think it's important to think about because the referee is not there to impose control necessarily, because it's kind of like a lid on a pot. If things get to a boiling point, that pot lid's going to come off. And so there's only so much that control can do for us. But what we can do is instead think about it as facilitating. You are conducting the orchestra, you are facilitating a good effort. And so in that way, we are understanding what we're doing as facilitating rather than trying to impose control. We want to stay away from an aggressive relationship, instead try to create a team environment. All right, so we have an activity. So does anybody want to participate in our activity here? Shout out if you want. I have a two-person activity, so I need 2 volunteers.
I got one. All right, me and
okay.
Buzzy. Let's go,
All right,
Buzzy.
Marlene and Buzz. All right, hold on one second. I'm going to pause my screen share. Okay, so Marlene and Buzz.
Marlena?
Yeah, Buzz, I need to see your face for this one. Here we go.
See, I'm taking a drink, Buzz. gotta prep for this.
I'm taking the night off, so go for it.
Okay. So for this activity, Marlena, you're person 1, and we're going to do this twice. Marlena is going to make a face, and this is going to be an easy one. We're going to start with an easy one. Marlena is going to make a face, and Buzz is going to tell us what emotion does that face reflect. So we're going to do this twice. The first one's going to be easy, and then the second one, we'll see if we can do a hard one. So Marlena, go. Face number 1. Okay, Buzz, what do we think?
That was it. Frustration and dissatisfaction.
Okay. All right. I was going with internal distress, but yes, I think that's a good one.
It's frustration and dissatisfaction at my own internal distress.
Valid, completely valid. Okay.
And the thing is,
right.
you gotta be fast. You gotta read it fast. That captain's coming at you with that face. You gotta get your hand blade out.
Get your hand blade, like, bro. Okay. All right, Marlena, this is the hard one. We want a subtle emotion here. Ready, go.
That was it.
What we got?
Well, she didn't believe my call and explanation at all.
Yeah, is that accurate?
Yeah, I tried to do a quick eye roll and then go back to eye contact.
And here's mine. I don't care if you believe me or not. So get back 10.
Oh.
Okay, so we're perhaps thinking about that as the feeling that we're having, and possibly not the feeling we're going to communicate, but yes. Awesome. Thank you guys. All right, activity number 2. So I've kind of shown you a couple, but so I'm going to pick people at seeming random. So turn on your camera if you want me to call on you. If you don't want me to call on you, then don't turn on your camera. So I will pick people at random and ask them to show me a gesture, okay? And keep it civil. All right, so Kristen, show me a gesture that could calm or lower the temperature. Yeah, that's a great one. That's absolutely a great one. When we have our hands out and we're thinking about like, hey, here. Ryan, another one. Anything that would calm or lower the temperature. Okay, taking a physical step back. Yeah, I think that's a great one. Kind of creating some distance, taking a step back. I think that's reasonable. Okay, what's something that's going to definitely raise the temperature? Mike O'Brien. Oh, we talked. Yeah, that was an easy one. Okay, give me another one. Yes, great body language. Perfect. Even better. Yes, the loom. This is something that I'm short. And so this happens to me a lot, that someone will try to like loom over me. And I will do exactly what Ryan did. Take a step back, because then they have to come to me. And then after a while, it looks like somebody just following someone around the field. And it's kind of funny, kind of disarms the situation. Okay. Anybody else want to play the game? Anybody else? I got one more. All right, well, I'm just going to call on Kristen again. Kristen, this is a teacher face. I'm sure you've seen it before. How would we demonstrate I'm not engaged? I do not want to engage with you. I don't want to communicate with you. Not making eye contact, staring at the cat. Uh-oh, Kristen's going to be right back.
No, that was how I'm demonstrating I'm not engaged. I'm turning
Oh.
my camera
For
off.
students,
Just like
yeah.
straight up, yeah.
Sorry.
I got it. A little slow on the uptake. Awesome. So yeah, so this is just a fun exercise to sort of get us thinking about like, what are we conveying? What are the gestures? What are the tools we can use? I think, again, as Ryan demonstrated, taking some physical distance is actually really, really, really helpful because it kind of makes people come to you. Another strategy that I use sometimes is, and this is not a gesture, but it's a tone, where I'll start talking slowly and in a whisper. And then people are like, what? And they kind of come in and they come to me. And that way they're entering my bubble in a way that makes them receptive to what I'm saying, because they're actively trying to hear me. So sometimes that works. It's really situation dependent, but sometimes it's helpful to watch game film from that perspective and say, what is the referee doing here to try to subtly diffuse the situation, to bring the temperature up, to kind of give the game some life if things are flagging. If it's one of those horrible games where it's blowing sideways in the rain and nobody wants to be there, like what can the referee do to give us some emotion? Or if it's 70-0 at the end of, what are you going to do to give that game some life? So trying to watch what the referee is doing in terms of language and words. Wayne Barnes does an amazing thing sometimes where he makes sure that he's using very precise phrases and very precise language, so that people, when their emotions are high, they don't have to think about what he's saying. They can just be like trigger phrase, right? As Vince pointed out. And so using those tools to sort of raise or lower the temperature and facilitate. Jake, go right ahead.
Hey, all great stuff. One more thing is timing, the timing of it, right? In the game, in the situation, a second feels so much longer. So taking a longer pause before you actually engage really, really helps. You think it's an eternity out there and you're like, I'm not saying anything. I'm not doing anything. What should I do? How should I engage this? But you could take 10 seconds and cool a situation down just by stopping it.
I think that's a great point. Absolutely great point. And sometimes, even if you have a situation in which there's a scuffle or like people's emotions, and if you just sort of slowly walk towards it, sometimes it diffuses before you get there, and then there's less work for you, which, as I'm going to say later, I don't want to see paperwork on this, right? So, all right, so let us move on. And now we're going to sort of flip the script. We talked about ways in which the referee can influence the game and kind of create positive experiences, even if you're only creating a positive experience for yourself, and you're controlling your controllables in your own bubble. Usually it'll rub off on everybody else. And if it doesn't, so be it. As Buzz said, so be it. But at least you're having a positive experience. Now, if the negative experiences kind of conspire to intrude into your bubble, that's what we're going to talk about next. Okay, back to sharing my screen. All right, so not so positive refereeing environments. Nobody wants to call Marge. Okay, and in this case, Marge is probably going to be Jason, who doesn't look nearly as good in the glasses, and it's not going to be a pleasant phone call. So, sorry, Jason. All right, this is the USA Rugby Directive. This is the policy officially has come down from on high, and I'm going to read it to you because it's what we're supposed to do. Verbal abuse directed at match officials. Notice we say verbal abuse. Okay, this is what we're talking about. Physical abuse. Absolutely zero tolerance, just GTFO, nobody wants to be there, get out. All right, but when we're talking about verbal abuse, particularly directed at match officials, should not be tolerated. Should not be tolerated. I don't know why they said will, didn't say will, they said should not be tolerated, and the following process should be followed. We're gonna ask them to refrain. On the second occasion, we're gonna ask them to leave. If the person refuses to leave, we are going to ask the team captain to assist. Failing compliance, the referee may abandon the match. Now, there used to be a thing where people would want to, penalties for bad behavior off the pitch. That's not what we do anymore. But moving on, Potomac Rugby Referee Society Directive, as it stands now, and we just had a conversation about this, we're saying that the match referee will adhere to that USA Rugby Directive. The referee will report the incident to the disciplinary officer for the league on the competition side. Offending persons will be given one warning by this. This is all happening after the match, but you're filing a report with the disciplinary officer. We're saying that that person's going to get one warning. It's going to be recorded. A second ejection will lead to sanctions. And there's a couple of other things. Again, all happening after the match. Our big tool that we use is the referee society is going to say, look, like you're not getting referees. We're not sending people into a difficult environment. I'm sorry. And I think that's entirely reasonable. Now, what does this possibly create in terms of problems for a referee? A lot of what Potomac is talking about is happening after the game. A lot of what USA Rugby is talking about is sort of thinking about multiple incidents, rather than assuming that maybe one incident is really bad. It could be that something is said, and again, we're talking about verbal abuse here. Something is said that makes you so uncomfortable that you really don't want to go through 2 or 3 more episodes, right? Like you don't necessarily want to do that. It may be something that I know for me personally, and I can't speak for anyone else, but I don't often feel comfortable telling angry people, especially, as a small woman, telling a large angry male person to leave the field is not something that I would feel comfortable with. And I for darn sure am not going to look at the equally hostile captain and be like, you should help me, because they're probably not going to. And it's just going to get uglier from there. So I brought this to the attention of the group and the board, and we had a conversation about it. I think what we're going to do, and this has not been finalized yet, but what we're probably going to do is maybe think about updating our language and saying that the referee has some options. The referee can think about whether they feel safe. And under the law, at any time, if the referee does not feel safe continuing the match, we often think about it in terms of like, is it safe for the players? But we also can think about it in terms of, is it safe for the referee to continue, right? If it's not safe for the players because of field conditions or whatever, it also could possibly be not safe for the referee to continue because of field conditions, as it were. And then, so really thinking about as a referee, like, do you feel safe? Do you feel comfortable continuing the match? If you do, there's a process, right? But always understanding what you as the referee feel like you are capable of and what makes you feel safe. And then thinking about, sometimes we ask ourselves, was it really bad enough to file a complaint? Usually, yes. I won't say in every circumstance, but in the overwhelming majority of circumstances, if you feel that a complaint is something that is possibly warranted, it's probably warranted. So we're thinking about understanding that we care, going back to that acronym of competence, accountability, reliability, ethical behavior. We also believe in caring for ourselves and our community by taking care of everyone on the pitch. So the best way to handle any situation in which you are feeling unsafe, you can simply remove yourself, right? Like that's an option. It is, some people think of it as a nuclear option, but it's an option if you feel unsafe in that moment. Also thinking about reporting and understanding that sometimes you don't feel comfortable and you maybe don't even know. I don't think I know who the disciplinary officer is for a lot of leagues. So possibly thinking about, hey, who do I feel comfortable with that I can share? And then maybe they can pass it along. Who do I feel comfortable talking about these things with? Who possibly has more experience or knows someone with more experience? Do I have a colleague? Do I have a friend? Do I have a referee coach that I feel comfortable with? And so thinking about reporting in a way that is, thanks, Buzz, reporting in a way that is productive. So Marlena had raised her hand. So Marlena, go right ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say the expectation is if someone reports something to you, the expectation is that you let Jason or someone in leadership know, because even if you don't know who to report it to, we do. And we're going to, especially with Ref Up, we have a much more robust way tracking this kind of stuff. So if you hear something from somebody and they said, I didn't report it, it's on you to report it. Because having had a few games back and having had a few negative experience as what I would claim myself now to be a pretty experienced referee, I can certainly say that some of those, if I had them 1 year in, 2 years in, I probably would have shared it with another referee, but I don't know that I would have gone to leadership about it. So this is the call to everybody who is experienced, especially, but everybody, you hear something, it doesn't sit right with you, report it and let the board deal with it as it should be dealt with. Okay. Thanks.
So Marlena brings up a couple of really awesome points. Absolutely, yes. If you see something, say something. If you hear something, say something. If you have, any sort of experience, or you know that somebody else has had an experience, then pass it on and see if you can use your experience to help make that connection with leadership. So that's a fantastic point. And I think, I believe it was Mike O'Brien made an excellent point as well. We're thinking about the next guy, right? We're thinking about the next person who's going to step onto that field. And as Marlena said, it's about tracking. It's about understanding that there might be a pattern of incidents. There might be, more than one thing has happened. And maybe it came off to, as somebody else mentioned, I think it was Buzz, that it might have been that a coach walked on the field, and for somebody that might be like, that's really not okay on multiple levels, but they themselves didn't feel as intimidating or upset or unsafe as someone else might feel. But if you're reporting that incident because that's really not okay, then we're saying there's a pattern here where this coach has come on the field 1, 2, 3 times. We've had these reports, and then it happened to a vulnerable referee who is new, feeling unsure, or otherwise is really having a negative experience because of that behavior. So tracking, alerting, passing it along. We are a community of support, and that's what we want to think about. Okay. Couple more points. What are we thinking about is really not okay. So we mentioned coaches approaching referees. Like, this might not be intuitive, but in case it, is something that we want to walk through. If somebody is stepping outside of that technical zone, that's not okay. If somebody is approaching a referee on a field, that is really not okay. And we can talk about when, right? At any point, right? Before the game, on the field, as long as we have that playing enclosure, the referee is on the field, the coach approaching them, especially we want to understand why that coach might be approaching them. Definitely during the game, right? I've had a coach come bursting out of the tech zone and wanting to have a word with me at halftime. No, not okay, right? And then also after the game, a lot of times we have coaches who feel like they want to communicate with the referee for whatever reason after the game, possibly the outcome, they feel affected. So really, if there is a coach coming onto the field at any point, not okay, right? Verbal abuse. And what constitutes verbal abuse? Well, it makes you uncomfortable, right? When we're talking about a definition of what is verbal abuse, it's what makes you feel uncomfortable. It makes you feel uncomfortable to the point where you might not come back next week. You are not having a good day. That is verbal abuse. And so it may be something where it can be handled by alerting that person to say, hey, the words that you're saying and the language that you're using make me uncomfortable. That may be one way to handle it, right? And that's one of our tools in terms of having empathy for that person and connecting with that person, recognizing the situation where the emotions are. Sometimes it's something where you're like, okay, this is so far beyond the pale, I'm out. I feel unsafe. There are always gradients and degrees. Physical aggression, we mentioned it, never okay. And then intimidation too can be physical aggression. I talked a second ago about, sort of, I'm here and a player likes to do this. That's intimidation. That player is trying to come into my bubble. And it can be something where I simply step back, and that's the way we deal with it. But if that is something that that player is trying to do to intimidate me, that's maybe something that could be a pattern. And it may be something that won't necessarily affect me as much, but it will definitely affect someone who doesn't have the tools to deal with it. So physical aggression, obviously never okay, but even something like physical intimidation, also not okay. Threats, that's verbal abuse. If somebody is threatening you or saying even something like, you better get out of here fast when you leave, or like, I don't envy your walk to the parking lot, or something, even that's a threat. And that is, or even, hey, I'm going to call someone about your performance. That could constitute a threat. That's not okay. And those are things that need to be reported. If somebody's threatening to derail your career, to make sure that you never referee them again, those are threats. Okay. And then, as Marlena mentioned, we're a community of practice here and we support each other. Sometimes that applies to, and in fact, in all cases, it applies to folks on the field as well. If you want to make rugby happen, if we have that pro-social goal, we are all here to make rugby happen. And there's an individual who does not want to make rugby happen, and they're derailing that experience for everyone. It's your job to intervene, right? If you see a fellow coach that is just going off the rails, it's your job to say, hey, this is not pro-social behavior. This is not creating a positive experience. It's a bad experience for the team. They're seeing this negative behavior. It's a bad experience for the referee, who may or may not come back. And it's just reflecting negatively on everyone. So enabling or failure to intervene when someone else behaves poorly can be also a different context for what's really not okay. All right. What to do? We mentioned this. Big thing that we want to talk about is talk to someone, talk to anyone. We're here to help. We're all invested in your success. If it's the disciplinary officer, your mentor, a referee coach, a friend, you can't make rugby happen without referees. So it is everyone's goal to ensure positive experiences. Marlena, I saw a hand.
I think you're about, is this the last slide? I'll just wait till the end if this
Okay.
is the last slide. Sorry,
I
thanks.
think so. No, you're fine. You're fine. It gives me a chance to check the chat because for some reason I can't see it. Yeah, so I'm seeing some great points. And Marlena, thank you for the contact information. That's actually a great thing. Thank you for putting that up. So, okay, quickly, we will keep on moving through. All right, last slide. Any questions? Because as we said, I don't want to see paperwork on this. Less paperwork, better days for everybody, more referee retention, more recruitment. Everybody gets to make more rugby happen. So, all right. Anyone want to chat? Marlena, jump right in.
What was I going? I have to pass now.
Oh
Totally
no, I'm
lost my
sorry.
thought. No, it's all good. Well, oh, now I remember what it is. So in anytime you're at a game, you see anything that Gray discussed, and I do want to say, Gray, this has been excellent. I thought you did a really great job with this presentation. Thank you so much for putting it together, and thank you so much for reaching out to the board ahead of time to kind of get some feedback. Apologies for not sending any, but I agreed with the thread, which is why I was like, you guys got it. But yeah, I mean, I went to watch another referee, and actually this has happened several times, and I've seen behavior that I know is, like when you see that, I'll make it very concrete. When you see that coach right on the sideline, taking one step, that's when you go over and you a lot of times all you have to do is just walk right in front of them, especially it always helps if you have Potomac kit on or any kind of referee kit on, because then they know immediately, oh, I'm not alone. It's not just me and the referee here, right? But even if you don't, just walk up to them or walk past them and say, hey, listen, take a step, because that's only gonna, it's only gonna escalate from there, right? And once it escalates, it's always much harder to de-escalate a really escalated situation versus just kind of nipping it in the butt. And it's our collective responsibility to, as Grace said, create a positive environment. So even if you're just watching a game as a spectator, or what, regardless of if you're at the game in a referee capacity, just, let's look out for each other. Just like you would if we were players, like if I see somebody kind of do something at the ruck I don't like so much, you bet your butt I'm gonna tackle you a lot harder the next chance I get. Similarly, hey, if you see anyone being treated that the way you wouldn't want to be treated, or you see something where you think it could escalate, just step in. And if you needed the society's green light to feel comfortable doing that, here it is. So thanks.
Excellent. Suzanne. Magical. So we're gonna tell, sorry, Kristen, 1 second. We're gonna tell war stories here in just a minute. But for the sake of the recording, do we have any questions on the material or anything we should probably address? And then we'll move on to telling war stories.
Yeah. So my question was specifically about kind of what Mike's saying in the chat of like the soft stuff. Where is the line? Because I have been told you have to have a thick skin, we have to get selective hearing, because like I was joking with my students today that you did an okay job as a referee when both sides are pissed off at you equally, right? Like, and so there's a sense that there is some stuff that we're gonna have to put up with, but like as a society, like where are we drawing the line? Like, oh, that ref needs glasses, love yours, by the way, Gray, where does, yeah.
Gray, can I take a stab at that?
Well, I'm gonna give it a try, but then absolutely chime in. So I think this is philosophical, and it's something that we've seen change, especially in the United States over the last 20 years. It used to be that there was very much a culture of let's out aggression each other, right? And we've seen that a couple of times. We had a referee we have a couple of referees who are refereeing in the United States right now who come from very aggressive environments in which people feel like they need to impose control, they need to have that aggression, and they're raising the temperature, right? With the way that they're interacting with folks, that they're creating a negative atmosphere and an expectation of a negative atmosphere. And we've worked really hard as a rugby culture in the United States to get that out of the game. We don't allow it in the players. We don't allow it from the coaches. And when I say we, I mean as a rugby community, right? That the parents, that we're not training players in this way from even, play and touch all the way up to even MLR and internationals, right? We've worked really hard to get that level of aggression out of the game. So where we see it, we're going to try to stomp it out, right? And then, so where do we draw the line? The line is you've made someone uncomfortable. If you are uncomfortable as a referee, somebody's crossed a line. And so that's why we're saying like we're going to start reporting, and we need to be reporting even the little incidents. If somebody says to you, referee needs glasses, that's aggressive, right? And that makes you feel uncomfortable. So those are the little things that you can just say, hey, a coach said this, he thought I couldn't hear it, but it made me feel upset. It was a negative experience. And so I'm going to tell someone. Those are the things. It made you feel uncomfortable. As far as I'm concerned, it's something you ought to be reporting. So Marlena, go right ahead.
Does anyone else want to take a stab at it? Otherwise, I'm happy to, but I don't want to only provide my perspective. Okay, I'll be quick. If it is affecting your ability to referee the best you can, then say, say something to them or report it afterwards if you don't feel comfortable saying something. But, echoing everything Grace said, if you ever don't feel safe at any point, there's no expectation from the society for you to continue refereeing the match, like follow the framework, etc. But I think exactly what Grace said, if you feel uncomfortable, it's not acceptable. And it is, especially, I think you have the best barometer for this, honestly, Kristen, like of everyone on the call, because you are a newer referee. And for some of us, we have heard such a variety of things that we're kind of numb to it. But I think especially for you,
should we be numb to it, right? And if we start saying like this isn't okay, and we don't have to have that thick skin, because like the thick skin means referee attrition. It means the referees who didn't have the thick skin didn't come back. So it's one of those things that even if it's something that you're used to or you've heard it before, like maybe thinking and framing in terms of like, do I need a thin skin, or should anybody need a thin skin? And what does this mean for our recruitment?
And I think, sorry, I know we've got hands up, but I think that was kind of my question too, because what I can handle and what makes me feel uncomfortable is very different from what makes Ryan feel uncomfortable. And I use that example because we both had two completely separate reactions to that same comment, right? My reaction, of course, was like, why is that coach being such an asshole? Especially when we had a great conversation and Ryan's like, you got a selective hearing. And so recognizing that people who would brush that stuff off, I mean, if that's where our line is going to be, then we need to be saying things even when we're not personally upset by it. Because otherwise you're going to get people like me hear that and go, I'm never refereeing that team again. Like I'm already done. Like I already have like 3 teams on my no list, and how many weeks into the year? I mean, it's ridiculous that so coming up with a line as a society and enforcing that, even if we're not personally offended, but we know someone else might be, I think will be very helpful.
Yeah, and I think as Marlena pointed out, it's an individual barometer, right? If you feel that this is something that probably crosses a line, I think it's a good idea to thinking about useful and productive ways to address it. So Jake, go right ahead.
Hey, I would just stop me if you've covered this, because I had to deal with kids for a second. But
sorry.
But I think that the we say like this is not the appropriate time for a coach to speak to us, and this is not the appropriate time for a coach to speak to us in a match. We should be clear about when is the appropriate time, right? And I have some ideas on it, but something, because I don't think right after the match ever, even after cool down, is an appropriate time sometimes for a coach to speak to you, because remembering the game minute by minute and what happened in that tackle and that rock and that scrum is a very, very high level skill. So a lot of times coaches aren't even trying to get clarity. They're more trying to just vent. And as many opportunities as I've had to say, hey, coach, yeah, definitely, I see your concern. Send me the video. I have never gotten video in the community level. Very, very, very rarely. It's only at the high level. So I don't know. I don't know what the solution is to that.
Actually, Jake, I think you pointed it out. Like that's one of my favorite solutions, is just to give folks an opportunity and an outlet, and it just sort of shaped that reaction to say, I'd be happy to talk to you after the match. That's something, or that may not work for everyone, or to say, I look forward to seeing the film. That usually is both productive and effective, right? If they don't have film, that's one thing. Or if they do, you could potentially have a productive discussion with the distance of email and the record of email.
It's a rare case nowadays that a team would not have film. So I think, I think that needs to be not the standard, but right. How can you understand a situation and grow if it's just a coach telling you like, oh, you missed this all game and you have no idea.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Stefan.
Hi. So yeah, a couple of things I thought there, and well, I was thinking too that my first instinct, yeah, you can brush it off. What's the harm? I can deal with it. But Marlene or somebody else said you're really not only enabling that behavior, but you're the next person may not be at the level that I am to ignore it. And I think we definitely have to be aware of that. I hadn't even thought of that until you just brought that up. And another dynamic is that the players hear that. They hear the coach yap, and then the next thing, I mean, sorry, I have 3 high school games this spring, and that third one, I heard a little bit. I mean, I took care of it, but the coach's bad behavior is enabling their kids' bad behavior. So really multiple reasons to end it quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Mike O'Brien, did you have another comment? I saw your hand up earlier.
I was just going to say that the phrase that stuck with me from an RFU experience was, don't let anyone distract you from enjoying your game for any reason. So like, it doesn't really matter what they say. If it distracted you, just say, please stop, you're distracting me. And it doesn't really matter what they're saying. If they're just talking to you, that can be distracting, and you're not going to give your best performance. And you're giving them like the underlying rationale of like, I'm trying my best, I'm going to give you the best game that I can. And anything you do that takes away from that, one, I don't want to come back. And two, I'm not going to give you the best game that I can. You're not going to have a good game either. So, it's a nice, gentle way of saying,
Yeah, for anybody that grew up, the Princess Diaries, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. We're not going to let anybody intrude on what we see as a good effort, a superior effort. We're not going to let anybody crap on our day. So that's the American version. Don't let anybody crap on your day. So thank you, Mike. That's fantastic. Okay, so any more questions, and then we'll move on to the fun part, which is dish.
Steven's got one. Stefan.
Oh, sorry, Stefan.
Or did he not?
Oh no, I just didn't put my hand down.
Awesome. Okay. All right. Well, thanks everyone. I'm going to stop recording and say this is. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I do have one thing to add.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
From a leadership perspective, where were my notes here? Referees are absolutely leaders out on the field, and there are technical aspects to leadership. My mouse go. There's technical aspects to leadership that you just can't overlook. It's more than just being a cool guy and having good rapport and being able to communicate everything. And part of that technical aspect is doing the paperwork after the match. It sucks. Everybody hates it. We constantly talk about this kind of stuff in the Air Force. If you want to get the right results from people, you have to do the work, and that's the paperwork. And this is actually significantly more important for the senior referees to do, the ones that have grown the thick skin, that have learned to just, yeah, whatever. He was being a jerk today. It's fine. Get on with it. And that's because we're setting the example for the younger referees that we have to stop this. And they're the ones that are not going to know how to handle this. So we have to be able to walk them through that entire process. Plus, we know what to say in a report to get the coach's attention, to get the society's attention. So we all need to be reaching out to any other referee that's having this and saying, let me help you with this. Let me help you with this, and let me set the example, and we'll work through this together. And that's all I have. Thanks, Greg.
Fantastic. That's an awesome point. And thank you for making it. Okay, well, thank you guys. I'm going to stop recording, and then we will get to tell all the stories.